There's no songs that I saw that had anything referencing Nehemiah, but obviously with the work that we're talking about, finishing the wall, I thought this would be an appropriate song as well. We'll sing verse 3, number 700, and then ask Brother Rick Arbor if you would to lead us in an open prayer. Verse 3, number 700. To the work, there is labor for all, for the kingdom of darkness and error shall fall. And the name of Jehovah exalted shall be in the loud swelling chorus. Salvation is free. Tolling on, tolling on, tolling on, tolling on. Let us hope, let us watch, and labor till the Master comes.
Pray with me, Paul. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be here in this Lord's Day. Kind of dreary outside, but every day is a great day when you're a Christian. Thank you so very much for all the many ways that you bless us. Be with our sick, be with our elders, as they make decisions to go in the church. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for all the many ways that you blessed us. Be with Jason as he leads our lesson this morning. Be with Mel. Worship highlight. Thank you so very much for bringing us together as brothers and sisters in Christ. Thank you so very much, Lord, for all the many ways that you bless us. Be with those who are sick and unable to attend today. Just make them well as possible, as quickly as possible. For us in your Son, most holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Rick. All right, our lesson today is lesson 9. If you don't have a book, there are several back in the back if you want to go grab one right quick. Lesson 9, page 88. And like I mentioned, we're going to be looking at the finishing of the wall. So it's a rather lengthy reading, but I'd like to get started by doing the reading of the text from Nehemiah chapter 6 and then through chapter 7, verse 3. Now it happened when Sanballat, the Tobiah, the Geshem, the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had rebuilt the wall and that there were no breaks left in it, though at that time I had not hung the doors and the gates. Then Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, Come, let us meet together among the villages in the plain of Ono. But they sought to do me harm. So I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and go down to you? But they sent me this message 4 times, and I answered them in the same manner. Then Sanballat sent his servants to me as before, the 5th time, with an open letter in hand. In it was written, It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says, that you and the Jews plan to rebel. Therefore, according to these rumors, you are rebuilding the wall, that you may be their king. And you have also appointed prophets to proclaim concerning you at Jerusalem, saying, There is a king in Judah. Now these matters will be reported to the king. So come therefore, and let us consult together. Then I sent to him, saying, No such things as you say are being done, but you invent them in your own heart. For they were all trying to make us afraid, saying, Their hands will be weakened in the work, and it will not be done. Now therefore, O God, strengthen my hands. Afterward I came to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Mechdabel, who is a secret informer. And he said, Let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, at night they will come to kill you. And I said, Such a man as I flee? And who is there such as I would go to the temple to save his life? I will not go in. Then I perceived that God had not sent him at all, but that he pronounced this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this reason he was hired, that I should be afraid and act that way in sin, so that they might have cause for an evil report, that they might reproach me. My God, remember Tobiah and Sanballat according to their works, and the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who would have made me afraid. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of Elul in 52 days. And it happened when all of our enemies heard of it, and all the nations around us saw these things, that they were very disheartened in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was done by our God. Also in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came to them. For many in Judah were pledged to him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Arah, and his son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshulam, the son of Berechiah. And they also reported his good deeds before me, and reported my words to him. Tobiah sent letters to frighten me. Then it was, when the wall was built, and I had hung the doors, when the gatekeepers, the singers, and the Levites had been appointed, that I gave the charge of Jerusalem to my brother Hananiah, and Hananiah the leader of the citadel, for he was a faithful man, and feared God more than many. And I said to them, do not let the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot, and while they stand guard, let them shut and bar the doors, and appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, one at his watch station, and another in front of his own house. And as I mentioned, it's a pretty lengthy reading. We have a lot of things in our lesson today that we'll go over. But in our introduction on page 90, it says, although Nehemiah was successful in motivating and organizing the Jews in their effort to rebuild Jerusalem's wall, the challenges posed by the conditions they faced were still daunting. And thinking about that too, the time it takes to build the wall in 52 days that we'll look at in a little bit more detail, it was a lot of work. But then, as I mentioned, there were other things that had to, that were challenges as well, not just the physical act of building the wall. That would have been enough in and of itself, wouldn't it? But there were other things that kept coming up behind them, trying to get them to stop the work, not just the physical labor of it. Besides having to work under the threat of attack from their enemies, they were forced to endure a period of famine that we looked at last week. That, difficult this situation was made, it was even worse by the Jews who sought to take advantage of the poor. So not only were they having the famine, they were continuing to tax them and try to make them mortgage their land, sell off their kids into slavery and things such as that, just to make ends meet because of this famine. And upon hearing the nobles and rulers were forcing the needy to mortgage their lands and sell their children into slavery to purchase gain, Nehemiah boldly confronted the guilty parties and rebuked them, saying, what you're doing is not good. So, like I say, and not to mention, during this time, he's got enough, just to manage getting the wall built, but then you're having to go along with the other things and try to, convince people that you're not doing the right thing after all. So Nehemiah understood the struggling Jews needed help, and following his own advice, he unselfishly used his own resources to provide for many of the people. He used his own grains and his own, goods to help others out. So it's no wonder that the people were willing to follow Nehemiah. And I've always thought about that too. It's like, when you've got somebody that's practicing what they preach, it's a lot easier to follow that person, isn't it? If somebody gets up there and just tells you, do as I say, not as I do. But how much more is it, when, somebody's doing work, they're out there getting their hands dirty too. It's a lot easier to follow that person. If somebody's just standing up in the front line saying, hey, go work, dig this ditch, build this wall, do something else. But what about the person that's, let's call it the supervisor, that's out there helping dig the ditch, helping build the wall, helping do those things? And I think it's a lot easier to follow that person. I think they're a better leader because they're willing to get their hands dirty. They're willing to do the work also and to be an example. And it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to follow somebody that's being an example like that, as opposed to somebody just standing up there and cracking the whip, so to speak, and saying, get this stuff done. So it does go on the top of page 91. He clearly placed the interest of the people of Judah before his own. It was not God's design that those in need should suffer. He wanted his people to take care of each other. And I think that's true for today too, isn't it? As Christians, we should all help take care of our fellow Christians and other people in the community and things such as that. Okay, then because of Nehemiah's leadership, the Jews were able to continue the work on the wall without interruption. And importantly, the progress made by the Jews did not escape the notice of their enemies. Then, as we looked a couple weeks ago, when they first decided we're going to rebuild the wall, some of these same people that are coming up in today's lesson, what did they do? They mocked, they ridiculed, they talked about, even if you rebuild this wall, a little fox could jump up on it, could tear this wall down. This is going to fall. It's going to be like a house of cards, so to speak, or something, isn't it? But then as the wall progressed and things were getting done, you're like, okay, we're going to have to change our tactics because obviously this ridicule and this making fun of it and trying to discourage everybody from doing the work, it's not working out. It's almost like they're getting stronger, they're building, they're working harder. So, what's the root cause? Well, obviously Nehemiah was the leader, so that's the next part of this story is like, we're going to try to get Nehemiah. We're going to trap him. We're going to take care of the leader. If we can take care of him, maybe everything else will fall apart. So obviously, our lesson text will show, that they previously tried to intimidate the Jews, turn their attention to silence and Nehemiah once and for all. And as our lesson text will show, they were unsuccessful. Nehemiah stayed on task. The wall surrounding Jerusalem was finished. The enemies of the Jews were dismayed, and everyone could see that God was at work. And like I said, we'll go into the details of that today. But are there any thoughts or comments as we get started this morning? Okay. So let's look at our first section on the middle of page 91. And this will be coming from Nehemiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 9 that I read earlier. So as I mentioned, the same individuals who were troubled when Nehemiah came to Jerusalem, who had laughed and questioned the propriety of the Jews' efforts, and who had conspired together to come to attack Jerusalem and create confusion, now viewed the almost finished wall with great dismay. And realizing the window for stopping the project was almost closed, they formulated a plan to capture and harm the one spearheading the work, Nehemiah. Because they could not easily enter Jerusalem and take the leader, they invited him to meet with them outside the city, saying, "Come, let us meet together among the villages in the plain of Ono." And I was thinking about this during the lesson. It's like, he's got the job, he's doing his thing, and somebody says, "Come, let's meet about it." How did Nehemiah know if it was a friendly meeting, which they kind of proposed it would be, or it was to seek him harm? He may not know for sure. Word travel, it takes a long time to get letters from one place to another. But regardless, he said basically, you know what, I've got this work I've got to do. I don't really have the time to leave my work and to come meet with you. Whether they were intending to do him harm or not, he still would not do it. And whereas Ono is a village located about 7 miles southeast of Joppa, near the border of Samaria, where some of the Jews who returned from captivity settled. So he said that perhaps this gave a sense of neutrality, but nevertheless, Nehemiah acknowledged the real purpose of the invitation. So he already kind of knew the writing on the wall, that they sought to do me harm. So consequently, Nehemiah sent messengers to reply that he would not come. He just kind of refused to say, I've got my work I'm doing. I don't have time to do it. I'm not going to meet you there, regardless of what their intentions were. So the reason cited in Nehemiah's response were worth noticing, where he said, "I'm doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and go down to you?" So he didn't challenge the intentions of the enemies. He just excused himself on the fact of this great work. Rather than being negative, he was positive and firm. He made his case. We got this work that's important. I don't really need to leave and come down there, period. And then the focus being on rebuilding the wall and not allowing his enemies to distract his attention. So that happened. Then what? It happened again. Same letter, same thing. So the same invitation was issued and rejected a total of 4 times. So each time, they're sending messengers. They bring the message. He sends and says, "Nope, I've got this great work I'm doing. I'm not going to come down from it." Go back and tell them that. 4 times, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And, time passed in between these because of the time it takes to run the letters back and forth. But as it mentions down in first third of page 92, Nehemiah should be commended for his steadfastness. As Christians, we would be well to imitate Nehemiah's resistance as we seek to avoid yielding to recurring temptations. It would have been easier, it's like, pleading again, pleading again, pleading again. Finally to say, you know what, this could go on for a long time. I'll just go, I'll meet with you, see what this is all about. But he didn't do that, did he? He just kept resisting, kept resisting. So after 4 times, then something else is happening, right? They changed their tactics a little bit after he didn't come after 4 times. So in the middle of the page 92, having failed to draw Nehemiah away from Jerusalem, Sanballat sought to force a meeting by openly accusing him of sedition. The letter stating this charge was delivered to Nehemiah unsealed. And, when I first read that about the unsealed, I didn't really think about it. But, if the king seals it with his signet ring and somebody else opens it on the way, then, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Because it was supposed to be a signed, sealed letter. But, the fact that it's unsealed means that he could pretty much take it anywhere he wanted to go and say, look, here's this open letter I've got. See what it says? This is what Nehemiah's doing. He's wanting to be a rebel. He's wanting to rebel, and he's wanting to be king. It says it right here in this letter, and showing everybody. And that's what this calculated move, as a minister and author James Burton Kaufman says, enable the messenger to scatter the evil report as widely as possible. So they're sending this letter and trying to, basically stir up as many people as they can to realize that, hey, Nehemiah, he's a bad guy. He's planning an insurrection. He's planning to try to, take over and be the king, and we don't need this. So he's trying to get people on his side, basically, by doing this letter. But an open letter to the head of a government was an insult. And filled with speculation, Sanballat's letter suggested the Jews intended to rebel, that Nehemiah intended to be king, and that prophets had been secured to make the proclamation, there's a king in Judah. And I think it's interesting that he said that he based these accusations on supposed rumors circulating around the nations and around Jerusalem. And for additional support, he noted Geshem's affirmation. So it's almost like he's stirring up these rumors. And, what is a rumor? You could hear it from somebody, or you could make up the rumor yourself, couldn't you? Exactly. I thought about that later on because, this is almost like cyberbullying or something, isn't it? It's what we have today. But this is stuff that took place over days' time, not instantaneous like we have today. And that's some of the problems of obviously just, everything is right now. Everything, you don't have to wait about world news and what's happening and getting, reports back and forth or sending letters. Because somebody can type out something right now, and everybody in the world has it instantly. So, different times, but it's the same type of thing. It's almost like bullying in a way, bringing these things up. Like I say, kind of like cyberbullying. They're kind of bullying the same thing, saying this is what, these are the accusations that we're making against Nehemiah and what he's trying to do. But again, they made up all these things, and Nehemiah, he could have taken the bait, so to speak. He could have went and argued with them or whatever. Well, they were trying to kill him anyways. If he would have gone to argue, they could have lured him out. Exactly. So it's kind of, like I said, it's just another distraction too. It's like all these things going on top of trying to get the main thing done is building the wall. So at the bottom of 92, from our perspective, it's easy to dismiss these rumors as groundless. But rumors do not have to be true to be effective. And think about that today, too. How many times the rumors get started about anybody? I mean, we can talk politics, we could talk friends, we could talk, places at work. It could be anything, and people start rumors about it. And if you buy into that rumor, and that's what you feel like you believe, and that doesn't be the truth, then it may not be true. And again, he did not take the bait. Now, it says that the merely needed to contain some grain of truth. And we consider the history of the Jewish people, rebellions and uprisings were not uncommon. Thus, Sanballat's charge would at least draw the attention of the Persian leaders. And when we consider that King Artaxerxes had previously halted the work in Jerusalem in response to a similar accusation, we see that Sanballat's attempt was based on precedents. So basically, he's saying, hey, this has happened before, that people have made up rumors, and they decided to stop, to investigate the rumors, or whatever it took. They didn't necessarily, they didn't know if they were going to make him stop the wall forever, but they could just get that foot in the door, so to speak. If they could just get a halt just a little bit and bring it up and say, see, we told you this was true. Now look at what he's doing. He's arguing. He's he may be guilty anyways, and that's why he's arguing everything. But there again, what was his reaction to these rumors, to this letter? At the top of 93, his response was both swift and decisive. He proclaimed, no such things as you say are being done, but you invent them in your own heart. He just flat out said, this is not true. You're making these things up. You're inventing them in your own heart. And had he diverted his attention from the building project to meet with them, they would have gained the advantage they sought. Had he said nothing, the enemies would have used his silence against him. So look, he can't even defend himself. It's true then. His silence is speaking that, it's true that, he's trying to rebel. Otherwise, he'd defend himself. But answering in a simple and timely manner, he stopped their attack. And, again, this is what a wonderful example of how to deal with rumors and lies. And ultimately, Nehemiah's course of action was based on his understanding of what the enemies of the Jews were trying to do. He knew they sought to weaken the Jews and stop the construction of the wall, but he was unwilling to allow this to occur. So any other thoughts on this section? All right. Does that mean that Sanballat just gave up? And Tobiah and all the guys? No. It's like, during this whole time, it's like, this didn't work, let's try something else. That didn't work, let's try something else. So let's go from within. So unable to coax Nehemiah from Jerusalem or distract him by accusing him of impropriety, Tobiah and Sanballat arranged for one of Nehemiah's own people to attempt to stop the leader. So now they're getting somebody from within, somebody that's a Jew, and they're, basically paying him to make these next statements up. And, I guess you think of Sanballat as an outsider. It's like, yeah, he's just trying to distract me. They didn't want the wall built to start with. But when somebody that's one of your own friends and, part of your Jewish, family, I guess you would say, they're telling you, hey, they're trying to kill you. They're planning on meeting. Let's go hide out in the temple and we'll make sure that you don't get killed. It probably means a little bit more at that point, wouldn't it? Because that's somebody from within that's telling you, you wouldn't think that person would be lying and trying to set you up. But there again, Nehemiah, he saw through that too, didn't he? So we'll see in that, so Shemaiah, the Jew who had been hired by Nehemiah's enemies, tried to convince Nehemiah to hide in the temple to thwart a supposed attempt on his life. Most likely, Shemaiah was one of the tribe of Levi and served as a priest. And this idea is supported by the priestly record in 1 Chronicles 24:18 that contains the name Delaiah, possible a reference to Shemaiah's father. It is also implied by Shemaiah's invitation, since only the priests were allowed to enter the temple, yet Shemaiah suggested that the temple is a place of refuge. So I think that was the first red flag that came up, wasn't it? Nehemiah knew that he didn't have any business in the temple because that was for the priest. And then yet one of the priests is saying, hey, come with me, I'll help, I'll guard you. He's going, wait, I'm not even supposed to be in the temple. Yeah, exactly. That's that first red flag that came up, wasn't it? And realizing this untoward nature of Shemaiah's suggestion, Nehemiah responded, and he's got two things. Should a man as I flee, and who is it that I would go into the temple to save his life? That I will not go in. And the two reasons to refuse the temple. First, he knew that someone in his position should not run from opposition. He hasn't ran yet, has he? All these accusations, all these letters that have come, did he stop his work? Did he run? Did he go hide? No. He's out front, let people see what I'm doing. And then second, he realized that he had no right to enter the temple. The law was clear in its assertions as to who should enter. Therefore, Nehemiah knew that he was not authorized and was thus unwilling to violate God's precepts. It says there's also the possibility that such an enemy would have opened the door to physical harm. So, if he was willing to let Nehemiah enter the temple for safe haven, what's to say that he didn't have the enemies in the temple already? So when he goes in there to close the door for hiding, for protection, they would be waiting in there to kill him. If he's going to, be underhanded like this, he's not going to care about taking the enemy in there and hiding them out. But regardless, he did not discredit himself by showing fear or reacting hastily. Instead, Nehemiah recognized Shemaiah's plot as an attempt to seduce Nehemiah into open fear and sin. But thankfully, he did not give in to this evil plot. Instead, the leader of the Jews remained firm and prayed to God to bring appropriate judgment upon his enemies. So, this is, 4 attempts, the 5th attempt, the 6th attempt. I mean, it just keeps going. Not to mention all the taunting, the jeers, and everything else, and making fun of when they first started the wall. But, then we're going to see that, in spite of all these efforts, in spite of all these things that they did to try to, keep Nehemiah from finishing it, that he finished the job. So in the completion, from chapter 6, verse 15 through 7:3, Nehemiah's steady leadership kept the Jews on task, and they were able to finish Jerusalem's wall in only 52 days. And when I was reading back in chapter 3, which the book kind of skipped over, it talked about all the different gates of the city and how the different tribes and clans basically built this section and from here to here and here to here. I don't know exactly how big this wall, but it was huge. I mean, it was a massive, 52 days, just less than a couple of months. I've had an addition going on in my house for quite a while. Ronnie knows about this. And of course, I've been doing a lot of myself. It's going on 3 years right now, and we're still not quite finished with it. I worked on it yesterday. But I can't imagine building this much of a huge wall. Of course, what does Mel say? Many hands make light work, right? There were a lot of people. But there were a lot of times also that, and we'll see in the completion here that, they work with half the people guarding, half the people working. And when they were working, they had their swords and everything with them because they knew that they could be attacked at any time. But obviously, a lot of people are getting after it and getting it done because they had this goal in mind. So Nehemiah, not surprisingly, this fact did not escape the notice of their enemies. Noting this, Nehemiah reported, and it happened when all our enemies heard it, and all the nations around us saw these things, they were disheartened in their own eyes, for they perceived this work was done by our God. And what Nehemiah knew firsthand had become obvious to all. God was working alongside his people. And that's the difference right there, isn't it? They had God on their side. They were able to do this, immeasurable and insurmountable task, I guess you would say, this huge task of getting the wall rebuilt again. And the successful efforts of Nehemiah are truly remarkable given the opposition he faced. Enemies overtly attempted to stop the rebuilding project through threats, taunts, and tricks. But resistance also came through less obvious channels. Some of the nobles of Judah kept a running correspondence with Tobiah, an enemy of the Jews. While they were not speaking favorably about Tobiah to Nehemiah, they were reporting to Tobiah all that Nehemiah said and did. So, they're kind of glossing over everything, aren't they? They're trying to get Nehemiah to say something, and they go back and report to him. It's like, oh, this is what Nehemiah's doing. But when Tobiah was trying to do the evil things, they weren't going and telling him that stuff at all, were they? They were kind of like, kind of glazing over the truth on everything. And, that could be disheartening too, because, you don't know what the truth is, with this distance in between and what's been reported. All right, so nevertheless, their attempts to aid the enemy of the Jews came to nothing. The wall was finished, the doors were hung, individuals were gathered to perform the task assigned in the law of Moses, and faithful men were given the responsibility of guarding the city. Although the wall provided a wonderful layer of protection for Jerusalem, additional precautions were needed and taken. So, like I said, that's a lot to kind of wrap up in our lesson today, isn't it? Any other thoughts, comments as we talk about the completion of the wall? Okay, so let's move over to application. I want to read through those, and then we'll have a time to look through some questions also. So number one, Nehemiah provides an excellent example of how to deal with potential distractions. Although we may never face threatening distractions like Nehemiah, there will be times when we are tempted to divert our attention from things of primary importance. To be successful, we must be able to maintain our focus in these moments. This will not occur unless we develop a clear understanding of what's most important. Perhaps Paul put it best when he wrote, "Set your minds on things above, not on things of the earth." So, through our Christian walk, there's going to be all sorts of distractions, stumbling blocks, things like that put in our way. And it's important for us to, keep pressing on toward the prize and toward the goal. Okay, number two. The skillful way Nehemiah addressed the rumors found in Sanballat's letter is worthy of our consideration. Because the rumors were potentially damaging, Nehemiah did not ignore them. Yet because they were blatantly false, he did not spend a great deal of time discussing them. His response was succinct but effective. When false reports circulate today, Christians would do well to respond similarly. The wise man said it best when he wrote, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, let he be wise in his own eyes." And we must be wise enough to know when to speak and to refrain from speaking. And I think that for me personally, that's kind of hard. I'm really quick just to spout out and go whatever's on my mind. Just go ahead and get it out there. But there are times where discretion and not taking the bait. So I kind of mentioned that earlier. Nehemiah didn't take the bait of these meetings or anything else that are better off. Sometimes it's better to let people hear them out, and sometimes you'll catch them in their own lies anyways, won't you? They'll start going around and around because they're making up lies to start with, and you kind of catch them with that. Then you don't have to say anything. It's like, well, you just said over here that this, and now you're saying that. You're contradicting yourself. What's the truth? But there again, when somebody does accuse you of doing something, you have a right to stand up and defend yourself. You have a right to say, this is not true. You can put the facts down and everything, but he didn't spend a lot of time. He didn't go out and discuss it with them. He just said, you've made these things up. These are in your own heart. You made them up. There's not a lick of truth to them whatsoever. That's it. You don't have to keep talking about it. You have to keep going on and on. So for us, that's the same thing. Sometimes you just you set the facts, you set the record straight, and you go on. Okay, then finally number three, Nehemiah recognized his actions would affect the Jewish people. For this reason, he would not respond to the threats of his enemies by showing fear. Now notice too, it's like several times throughout this whole thing, it's all about the fear. You're trying to get the people afraid. You could be attacked at any time. You're trying to get them afraid. You're trying to kill the leader Nehemiah. Trying to strike fear that we're looking for you. We're going to get you. All these things serve as distractions. And if church leaders can remain calm amid difficult situations, the membership will likely follow suit. It's important to remember that both our actions and reactions impact those around us. For this reason, we must conduct ourselves in a way that causes others to glorify God. And, it kind of mentions in here about the church leaders, how they respond to a situation. If you've got a bad situation that comes in and you kind of like, kind of hide it over here in the corner and think, well, it's not going to be bad. How many times does something like that happen and it builds up, gets bigger, 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 and then you go, whoa, it just exploded. Where did it come from? But if you thwart it from the start and say, no, we're not going to tolerate this. This is not right. This is not what's in the Bible. Then everybody else kind of follows along with that. And I think so many times, things creep in just a little at a time. That seed is planted of a negativity or whatever it might be. And as it grows and gets bigger and bigger, then it becomes a big problem at some point. So obviously we need to, if you got something that's false, we need to put it out right then and there. Okay, any other thoughts on our lesson then? Please. Yes. Yep, but the thing is, they don't ever say, maybe that's the God that we should follow, is it? No. It's like they're so set in their ways. I think about that with the prophets of Baal and things like that. When they're trying to get the altar and just lit on fire, they're cutting themselves, they're yelling, they're screaming, they're doing all this stuff. But, they never renounce it and say, you know what, maybe we aren't following the right God after all. Maybe we need to follow the God of, the Bible there. Exactly. But definitely, it's always been, and you can see today even, the conflict and everything else. So that's true. All right, so let's look over a few questions. And like I say, most of these are pretty straightforward, but we'll go ahead and go through them. Number one, where did Nehemiah's enemies try to get him to meet with them? In the plains and the villages of Ono. That's correct. So as we mentioned earlier, it's kind of a, let's call it a neutral site. Where maybe he wouldn't be quite so intimidated and things such as that. But obviously their whole intent was to do him harm, wasn't it? Okay, and how many times did he refuse this invitation? 4 times. Okay, then number 3, what did Sanballat's letter accuse Nehemiah of trying to do? Yep, start a rebellion, make himself king. Exactly. So there again, just baseless rumors and, this one Geshem guy, well, I think we're going to get into that in just a second. But just, there again, trying to, thwart this whole thing. Okay, 4, why was the letter not sealed? Exactly. It's posted for everybody to see on the internet today, isn't it? Exactly. It's open. It's available for everybody. So they're just telling everybody they came in contact with, look, here's the open letter. Go spread the same rumor because here's the letter. We got it. Exactly. Yep. And like a great example. I mean, it's the way we're in different times now with the internet. Somebody could post something in the basement and boom, put it out for the whole world to see instantly. Exactly. All right. So number 5, what 2 sources did Sanballat cite in support of his accusations? Yep, the report among the nations, and specifically, who did he mention? Geshem. Yep. So you have to imagine this Geshem guy. He's probably like, hey, I'll be glad to say that he's planning on doing this. I heard a rumor about it, so I'm going to say it's true. They're trying to give it a little bit more credence to say that, all right, here's a specific name of somebody that, heard what Nehemiah was trying to do, and because he heard it and his name's on it, he's signing his name on the dotted line. He's got to be telling the truth, right? But, that happens today. We have false witnesses all the time on stuff, don't we? We have people that get up there and lie and, paint a picture that's not true all the time, and for whatever reasons, whatever motivations. All right, number 6. What did King Artaxerxes previously done to make Sanballat think that his letter might stop the Jews' work? Yep. Exactly, the same accusations, and what did he do? He stopped the work. Exactly. So he thought, well, if he's done it once, hey, that's a precedence for it. He could possibly do it again. Just give us a chance again to get the foot in the door. Okay, number 7, who tried to get Nehemiah to hide in the temple? Shemaiah. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it either, but yes, that's him. who was presumably a priest. And then why did Nehemiah refuse to do so? 2 reasons. Yep. He'd break the laws if he entered the temple, and then he also said he shouldn't run and hide. Somebody in his authority, in his position, shouldn't. Yep, exactly. If he would have done that, number one, to run and hide. Hey, look, he's scared. He's running and hiding. That's what they were wanting to strike in his heart to start with, is that fear. And then, oh, look, he went in the temple. He's not a priest. He's not supposed to go in the temple. He knows better than that. See, this is what he's willing to do. He's willing to go in the temple even though he's not supposed to. Therefore, he's willing to do everything else that, we had in these rumors and all. Okay, so a few discussion questions, and, these aren't, obviously, these are, our opinions right now, but what can Christians do to avoid losing focus? Mm-hmm. What else? Study, absolutely. What can we do if an accusation comes up against somebody or against the church or whatever else? We can go through and find out what the truth is, right? We can dig deeper. We can, if somebody accuses somebody of doing something bad, you don't immediately just say, hey, that person said they're bad, they're automatically bad, In the case of Nehemiah, if they would have done that, they was, when all these rumors came up and he's trying to rebel, they could have easily, the people would have said, hey, that's right, maybe this is true of what he's trying to do. He's trying to rebel, he's trying to take over and be king. We need to rise up against him. But, the people didn't do that either. So I think today, when false accusations come up against somebody, we need to make sure and see if they're really based on anything or not. If they are true, then obviously there's a different response. If they're not true, then aren't you glad you didn't go and, try to take this person down before you even knew that there was a lie? Okay, and number 2, what is the best way to respond to a rumor? And do you think that Nehemiah's answer provides a model for us to follow today? And then why or why not? And you don't want to over embellish the reasons why either, do you? You want to be kind of short, specific, let the facts go out there, but you don't have to go around and around and around. But also the fact that you need to answer something. If you don't answer anything, then obviously they're going to say, "Whoop, see, he's not even defending himself. He knows he's wrong in that or in that rumor." Yeah, short to the point. It's. and sometimes how many people are trying to get wrapped up in words, trying to have this big vocabulary, and they try to be extravagant in the words and everything else, and you're sitting there going, what did they even say? Sometimes it's like it's better to be short and sweet, to be short and to the point. Exactly. Mm-hmm. They almost brainwashed it into that respect, right? Well, and kind of your point too, I had a discussion with one guy at work, and he was a Baptist also, and we went through it, and we kind of read through it, and he kind of looked at it, and he's like, well, I see what that says, but I'm going to talk to my preacher and see what he says. My pastor, I think he called him at the time, and it's like, see what he says about that. And it's like, why would you, you just read it right there. Why would you want to go to somebody else and see why his opinion is different on it? And it's like, I guess sometimes it seems kind of foreign. It's like, well, if it's right there in black and white, what's in there that you didn't understand? And, but like you say, they put so much faith in that person. Well, I've trusted him for all this time. He's been, preaching. He's been doing this or that. So I want to get his opinion and see what it is. And, you're looking for the opinion of man rather than the opinion in the Bible. Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, that's called confirmation bias. You know what you believe, and then that person, knowing you agree with them, when there's confirmation, and that just reinforces it.
Exactly. Yep. Okay, that's about all we have time for right now. Is there any other thoughts, closing thoughts or comments? All right, next week we'll be in lesson 10, and we're going back Ezra reading the law. So I appreciate everybody's attention, and we'll have the worship here shortly.